So the goal of this short video on photosynthesis is to actually figure out what happens in cells during photosynthesis. So here in this picture, we are looking at little tiny cells of algae. So most algae that we think of and we know about are one-celled organisms. They are a type of plant, and this particular type of plant can do something that you can't do, and that is use the energy of the sun to make its own food. Which of course we can't do, right? If we're hungry, we have to go open up the refrigerator and get something to eat. There are a few different types of organisms that can do this, photosynthesis. Plants in general, including algae, some bacteria can go through photosynthesis, and some one-celled organisms called protists can use the energy of the sun to make their own food in photosynthesis. You might have seen protists when you looked at the algae cultures the other day. So they're little one-celled organisms that swim around and live in fresh water mostly. So anything that is alive that can make their own food is called a producer. So they're producing their own food, but they also produce food for other organisms like us. So producers collect the solar energy from the sun, and they use that solar energy to turn carbon dioxide and water into glucose, which is just a fancy way of saying sugar, and oxygen. Where does this chemical reaction happen? So in algae and plants that we call true plants. So true plants are plants that have roots and leaves and stems and things like that. So in those types of organisms, plants, and algae, photosynthesis happens in the chloroplast. So this is what a chloroplast looks like. It's actually what gives plants the green color that they have. Notice too that in this plant cell there are also mitochondria, and you might remember that mitochondria is where cellular respiration happens. So photosynthesis and cellular respiration happen in different places. Bacteria cells, which are a lot more simple than any of the plant cells, the photosynthesis happens in the cell membrane, which is part of the outside of the bacteria cell. So why do cells need to go through photosynthesis? We already kind of mentioned this earlier, but first of all, they need it to go through photosynthesis to make their own food, in this case sugar, and a particular type of sugar called glucose. And they need to make that sugar, so they have what they need to later on make energy through the process of cellular respiration, because we know that in cellular respiration, cells need oxygen and sugar to make energy that they can use to do the things that the cell needs to do, like grow and live. This graphic is going to kind of show us this. So we've got photosynthesis on the right side. Remember, it's happening in the chloroplasts, and during the process of photosynthesis, both oxygen and glucose get made. Glucose is the fancy name for sugar. Whatever oxygen the plant needs to make energy, that's going to head right over to the mitochondria. Mitochondria is where the cellular respiration is going to happen, and that's going to produce energy for the cell, carbon dioxide and water. Now, any extra oxygen that the plant has is going to release out into the atmosphere as waste. So, recapping photosynthesis really quickly. We know that cells, which are called producers, like plant cells, algae cells, some bacteria, use the energy from the sun, so solar energy, combined with carbon dioxide and water to create oxygen and sugar. And the cells then use the sugar and some of that oxygen to make energy. And cells release any extra oxygen as a waste product.